Welcome back to Writing Done Right. Today we're going to talk about fonts, font licensing, and all of the things that you're going to need to know when you're talking about fonts in your project. All right, so jumping into the topic of fonts. If you need to pick up some fonts, and you probably do, have a look at the affiliate link in the description or on the webpage here to find my link for FontSpring. This is the place I buy all the fonts that I happen to need for my writing projects. And we're going to talk about when you need to buy them, when you don't need to buy them, and the different types of licensing that there are. Now, be aware that this can cross into some legal boundaries, so if you do have some legal counsel, definitely run it by them, particularly if you're dealing with somebody in the copyright world. But I do have a pretty firm understanding this will get you as a good primer to get you started. So when we're talking about fonts, there's a couple of different licensing out there. One of those is called the desktop license. This is the most common, the license that any graphic designer just has lots of desktop licenses. This basically says if you've bought a copy of this font, you can use it for anything that does not mean distributing that font. As long as it's embedded in an image or on a project, there's really not a lot of general limitations. Overall, you buy the font license once, you can use it for any pictures, any images, any artwork. If you're selling swag, you can go ahead and put it on there. Anything as long as that is not selling the font itself would be covered under a desktop font license. So if you are your own LLC, like I have my own LLC in this publishing company, then I can buy the desktop licensing and I can use that font in any type of project that I might need that licensing for. There's really not a lot of limitations as long as you are not embedding the file somewhere, with the exception of embedding the font in a PDF. The reason is, if you're embedding the font in something, you can actually extract it, and that type of license costs a little bit more. Embedding in a PDF, you can't extract it. It just allows the font to be used by the printers so that everything is working. So, we're talking about where you need a desktop license for your book or your writing project. Any of the images on your book cover, a desktop license is going to cover all of those fonts. Anything that is used on the interior, just the basic interior print design, as long as that's not being distributed in an ebook form. So a desktop license covers the fonts in those general areas. You buy it once, you can use it for the number of different books that are out there. It doesn't matter. There's not a lot of other limitations on the desktop font. Now the next one we're going to find in terms of writing is the ebook font license. So when you are reading an ebook, if you've ever actually read an ebook that has nice, beautiful embedded fonts, that's not just the boring same old stuff that you've seen 1,000 times, then they are embedding fonts inside of the book. So with the fonts being embedded inside of the book, it is possible to extract those. And that is why there is a separate license for things involving using your fonts. And so when you are purchasing ebook license, you're usually purchasing it per title, which means the yellow book back there that I wrote, since that is a parody book and I was duplicating the design, I had to buy some fonts. Some of those had some desktop fonts, no big deal. Some of those had an ebook font. I can use that ebook font license in only one book because I only bought a single book font license for it. Now, if you are trying to use that same font in multiple different projects, you're going to need to go back and purchase a font license for each one of those individual projects. So, one license per ebook title that you have. Now, in my case, that font I was talking about, I bought it once and it came with a font license for the desktop license, and it came with one ebook license. That's one of the great things about FontSpring. Have a look over there. If you need multiple font licenses, you'll usually get a discount if you're getting multiple licenses for the same font, which you would if you are embedding inside of an ebook image. Now, let's talk about it now because we're still in the ebook mode. What the difference here is, if you're talking about the font is in the image cover of your ebook cover, you do not need an ebook license for that. You only need it if it is embedded inside the text of the ebook file itself. And when we get into some tutorials about building ebooks, that will become very clear. Basically, if you're using the font in the ebook that's not in a picture, you need the ebook font license. So that's your ebook font license. Now the next one we're going to encounter is the web font license. This is going to deal with your author websites, especially if you are building up a website with a page dedicated and branded to match that book. You are actually probably going to want to use a web font license if you are embedding it. So in website design, there is a thing called CSS, or Cascaded Style Sheets. This tells a website what to look like. Inside that is a type of font embedding called @FontFace. When you are embedding @FontFace, you are allowing the website to load in the local browser that font. Again, that can be extracted, so you need a separate font license to display that font on your website. So you would need to get the license for that, and that is limited by the page loads. So you would buy a package with, 100,000 or 1,000,000 page loads. And then once you would cross that page load account, you actually will need to go in and re-up the license and get more page loads for it. Now, there is actually a way around using this, and that is if you are creating, this is old school, this kind of goes back to the 90s and early 2000s web development, where your title will actually be a picture. So if your title is actually just a picture, you actually don't need the web font license. You only need it if you are embedding the fonts in the style sheet. You can talk to your web developer or talk to me about it if you have a question. I am a web developer. I know how those work. So those are the basic 3 font licensings that we find in this world. There are other ones if you're building apps. There's demo licenses. There's a few other, there's custom licenses. We're not going to cover those because, hey, they're not as related to writing and authoring projects. But here, what we just wanted to mention is 3 basic fonts: the desktop font license, the ebook font license, and the web font license. Take a look at the affiliate link at FontSpring to get the fonts that you need. Now, before you go and buy your fonts, though, I want to tell you that there is a great place for good, safe downloads. And I do not download any fonts except for the aforementioned FontSpring and the free font repository, which is called Squirrel. If you go to Squirrel and you go and select local only, the majority, not every, but the majority of the fonts on that can be used in nearly every project. What you're going to want to do is you're going to go over to Squirrel. Look for the fonts that you need. You can do various types of searches and designs and filtering and find the fonts that you might need. And then click on the glyph page for that. And then click over to license and see what it is. If you have an SIL license, that generally can be used anywhere. So before I purchase my fonts, I always go and grab all of the fonts I'm looking for from the free source as well. While I love FontSpring, I don't give them everything because writing our books is already expensive enough, and the vast majority of what we want is available as open source fonts, and this is why I'm so committed and dedicated to the open source world, because these people have opened their work up and allowed us to freely use it in commercial projects. So most of the books, if you see the panel of books behind me there, the yellow book has some fonts in there that are, I bought licenses for because I was matching that font. The only other one is the holiday book right here. We could not find a good open source font for Fire, which we wanted the word holidays in Fire. So I went on over to FontSpring and picked myself up some font licensing for that. And for that book, we did not use that font embedded anywhere in the ebook. All of the other fonts are open source in that particular book. And so we only had to buy the desktop font license. Yellow book, we do have one ebook font license in there that I did actually use in the ebook for some of the things. And the other fonts we bought, we just did the desktop license. No big deal on that. All the other books that I have in there, and they're beautifully designed books, all free and open source fonts downloaded from the free source FontSquirrel. So check there first. If you can't find what you're looking for over there, head on over to FontSpring. Use my affiliate link. That'll help support the channel. So thanks for coming along on this video. Leave your questions about fonts and font licensing and things like that in the comments down below. Thank you for watching, and follow along on more videos on this channel, and we will teach you how to get your writing done right.